Gary!
God, there you are.
There he is.
You're looking very well, man.
Good afternoon, Gary and Guy. Good afternoon.
Ray, Gilbert.
Yep. Ray, yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Hey, Ray is fine.
Where are you?
We have a purpose-built studio here in Jersey, so I'm in there, in the machine room or in the control room.
That is your own SSL, is it, behind you?
Yeah. I like SSL as opposed to Neve. I don't like the flying failures.
That's amazing. Right. I mean, I envy that setup. That looks fantastic. And also, the thing about having a studio like that, you have to get in it nearly every day. Otherwise, you just feel, it's just staring you in the face, isn't it?
There's 24/7. It's never off. It's always turned on and stuff. But the interesting thing in this desk, the first desk we had came from George Martin's Oxford Circus studio.
Oh,
and this one we have now has come from Japan. And
wow.
they're not new, but they're really expensive anyway. So even getting a second-hand one is good.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I was just saying, sorry.
No, you go, okay.
Oh, we're very keen today, aren't we? We're hot to trot. You like butting into each other. First of all, thank you for doing this. The reason I was explaining to Guy earlier, one of the reasons that we thought about getting you on, because we weren't nudged by a record company, was I follow Richard Hawley who's been on Rockonteurs on his Instagram, and you popped up, and then I called Richard and I said, wow, I would absolutely love to get Gilbert O'Sullivan on the show. You know, I had no idea you were supporting him. He's such a great guy. How was that?
Yeah, we went up to support him. It was his day. Richard, we had a great time. We did a 45-minute set, and it was really nice. I mean, he's a wonderful musician anyway, and we had a great time. Really nice time up there.
Did he? Were you there at his request?
Yeah,
I thought so. Which is great. I mean, we were talking about this, how your incredible influence on so many other artists has been, but which just goes on and on and on. It's really not sort of stuck within like the time frame of.
Yeah. I mean, we were mentioning Paul Weller and how, I found on the internet there's like Morrissey singing 3 of your songs,
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing, Gary. The B-side of Nothing Rhymed. So it was called, I didn't know what to do. It was called, right? And it was fun trying major piano with a drummer and stuff. But Morrissey loved Nothing Rhymed, but he performed with his band the B-side. It's great. I have that version of it. I mean, I listen to it every now and then. It brings a smile to my face because it was my B-side, and he's almost made it into an A-side with his whole band playing.
But that's so Morrissey, because he is basically saying, look, I know the obscure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
deep dive Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Yeah. Also, Nothing Rhymed might actually just have too many chords for his band. I mean, there's a lot of them.
But also Tim Burgess as well.
Tim. We brought Tim on at the Barbican to sing Nothing Rhymed with me and stuff. And he does that album. We did that with our last album.
Oh, right.
That great, where you sit around and talk about each of the tracks on the album.
National treasure.
So we're just sort of letting you in on what our intro was, because we were having a discussion about this, and I have a little theory as to why this generation and my generation to a certain large extent, but that generation seemed to plug into you so much, and maybe how your influence really did appear a lot in the 80s and 90s, because I think in the early 70s, when I was a kid buying records, whether it was Roxy Music or whether it was Bowie, Led Zeppelin, it was about these bands singing about this aspirational, larger-than-life world that we could only dream of getting to, where what you were singing was about, parochial things. But, I remember We Will coming out when I was very young and thinking, Jesus, he's singing about my house. It really felt like home to me. And I think, the phrase that's been used is bedsit introspection. And I do think that was what Morrissey has plugged into, what, Tim Burgess has plugged into. And, that sense of, when the people wanting to sing about life not being so amazing.
Yeah, which is actually, it's like you skipped a bit, because it's actually a very kind of post-punk phenomenon. It is a very 80s thing. It's like your influence was just sitting there waiting to kind of.
Yeah. Well, it's nice of you to say those things. I mean, I take it on board and I appreciate all that stuff. But I mean, I think Morrissey may have liked me because of how I looked. He might have been one of the few people who liked how I dressed must remember, I looked a bit freakish, but I loved the fact that I could do something different because I knew the music was what, if there was any strength in what I did, it was in the songs I wrote, not how I looked.
But that was a nice thing, wasn't it? Because, of course, what's great is the fact that you did have, because it's interesting, because Elton John obviously felt the same way. You know, he went with a very strong image in a very different way. But because you make a very good point, didn't you? You said, for instance, that like your mum wouldn't like Neil Young because of the way he looked, not because of the music.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. My mother wouldn't have known who Neil Young was, to be honest.
No, it's a quote of yours.
Yeah,
so.
it's a quote of mine.
Yeah,
but but the key is that the factor is I was turned down by every record company in the UK in '67 when I came up to London to break into the business, and I created this character called Gilbert because I love Charlie Chaplin. I used to go to the Academy Cinema to see the Chaplin season, Buster Keaton season. Woman would play the piano on the stage, fantastic, and so the Beatles and Chaplin were the big influence. I used to hire a Chaplin jacket from the costumers, theatrical costumers, and put him based in the haircut, which is now the height of fashion. But in those days, long hair was here to stay, so I looked a bit freakish. But I made the image because it's just something I wanted to do, but it had nothing to do with the writing of songs, because the key to everything I do, bar looking like I did in those days, is in the songs. Without the songs, it would have been a laughing stock. I'd have been a Tiny Tim of the UK.
But there was a kind of built-in nostalgia which suited that particular look that you had at that time, and everyone had to have a look, because if you went on Top of the Pops, you had to have a look. Right?
But Gary, image was a dirty word in those days and stuff. You know why the Beatles were a catalyst was because they didn't have to pull the hair over their eyes or over their foreheads, because long hair was slicked back, and they didn't have to wear collarless jackets to be as successful as they became. So so that I kind of identify with that. But I knew in '67, '68 that I didn't want to let my hair grow and just go around in jeans like James Taylor. If looking back now on reflection, I would have been quite annoyed to see how I look if I had compromised and gave in to what the record companies were saying. I love it when I look back now. I see how I dressed and I think, well, how the hell did I get away with that?
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about Charlie Chaplin, because Guy and I met Charlie Chaplin's son not so long ago, and we got shown around Charlie Chaplin's old house in Switzerland, which was
really
absolutely amazing. But so let's just be still very interested how you got there and how you got to be that person, how you got to be the writer of those particular songs, because it wasn't like you were in the zeitgeist or there was other people doing that as well. You really were, I feel, quite a unique writer at that time. The only sort of direct influence maybe you can see is obviously the Beatles. But let's go back to how you found the piano as your instrument and where you were living.
Well, yeah, working class families in those days, 50s, however little money, whatever little money they had to live on and stuff, always had a piano in the house. Always seemed to be a piano in the house. And the great thing was, the theory was that if they learned how to play the piano, they could go into a pub and they could earn a few bob in the pub at night time. So that's one of the reasons pianos were there. I had piano lessons, but I think it was the only one member of my family. I'm one of 6. So I was the only one that seemed to be interested on the musical side. So I had piano lessons. Didn't really enjoy piano. I don't know if you had piano lessons when you for your writing, but I didn't enjoy the piano lessons because she found me out. I mean, when I came in one afternoon for my half hour, I played something that wasn't written. Well, I thought it was written, and she said, to my mother, she said, "You're wasting your time and your money sending him here." And so, it's that thing about you just pick up the instrument was the key factor. We had a garden shed, council house estate, so you had a tiny little garden.
In Swindon, right?
In Swindon, yeah. And so the piano got into the garden shed, and I would sit there, come in after college in the evening for a couple of hours and tootle away. On the weekend, the funny thing on the weekend was, because you're in a council house with other houses left and right of you, on a weekend, the men would be out digging the garden, planting the potatoes and stuff. And this is idiots singing Masters of War in the garden shed, Bob Dylan songs and Beatles songs and stuff, and no soundproofing. And it was incredible how they never complained. I had one shoe thrown on the roof, but that was it. So I mean, the piano was a great thing for me because it allowed me to develop and to get into writing.
That's why I wonder how far you went with your lessons Right, because like you say, Master Dylan and the Beatles are the two names that always come up.
Yeah.
But actually, your songs are from a much more, in terms of just technically, they're from a very, very sophisticated place. We're more, I was saying, looking at more kind of Burt Bacharach or Jimmy Webb or that sort of style of writing, which seems.
Well,
So I was wondering how much of that is from you. I mean, how technically adept you got from your lessons.
Well, I think Gary would agree with this. I think the reason we're able to write, if you were asking how are you able to write songs, it's not that we read music like Bacharach and the great American songwriters, Cole Porter, Berlin, Hammerstein, but it's a love of music. It resonates with us in a way that makes us want to first of all play what they're singing, and then we suddenly make up our own tunes. That's how we're able to do it. And so the influences are there. If you saw a picture of me in my bedsit in 1970, you'd see on the wall Ella Fitzgerald sings Rodgers and Hammerstein. I mean, I'm only 19 years of age and stuff, but I realized that the key to being a good songwriter was to learn from the greats and stuff. That's the lesson. That's what you take. That's what you need to do to develop, be influenced by these great writers, which might allow you to be able to write songs yourself.
Because it always felt to me that your tunes, your music, your playing was a device to deliver your lyrics. It rather than in most pop songs where it tends to be the other way around, the lyrics are just there to get the tune,
to deliver the hook. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, explain that to me, Gary, and so I can.
I think your lyrics were, I think, one of the most important parts of your writing, and your chord sequences, whatever you are doing underneath, is there to enhance and to empower those lyrics, and for us to be moved by the words.
Okay, I get. Yeah,
that's the way it presents itself. And so writing words that must have. Let's forget the piano for a second. Writing words that must have been important to you as a kid.
Yeah, the words are. Dylan was the reason that isn't just love songs that you can write. You can write about issues in the world and stuff. I mean, the great thing, I always felt when I talked about the early songwriting, the success and stuff, my songs are like a newspaper. Page 1 is about one subject, page 2 something else, and then the common denominator is the hook line at the end. And Nothing Rhymed is a good example of that, because that was at a time when, for the first time ever on television, Biafra, starving children. We'd never seen that before. You were just a tiny kid, obviously then. But for our generation, to see starving children on the television was unheard of. And so that got into the song, because that's what's good about being the kind of lyric writing that I do. You can talk about issues going on in the world without it being the hook line, without it being the necessary hook line at the end of the verse and stuff.
Way before Band-Aid, that was, mentioning that, and I don't think I ever really appreciated it until listening to it recently.
But also just how sophisticated the idea of just calling a song Nothing Rhymed, and because there isn't a standard structural, course to it, and it's like a fantastic expression of almost stream of consciousness of thoughts, isn't it?
I think the as a songwriter, Gary is the writer of words and music and stuff. The thing is, I think you're born to be able to do lyrics. I think you have that ability from birth. But I think to write melodies, that's what you develop when you get older and love music from an early age and stuff by listening to it. I find that really interesting, how we're able to write words and what's the background. I mean, I loved Spike Milligan, and when I was at college, I used to write Spike Milligan kind of humorous poems and stuff, and that got into my lyrics and stuff. But to be influenced by Spike Milligan, I think is a great thing.
But did you see yourself as political on that?
No, God forbid. No, I wouldn't want that. That's what I mean about going into those areas, Gary, and then coming out and getting back to maybe that's how you started the song. I mean, that's the interesting aspect of lyric writing. I hope you probably find it too. It's a fascinating process and stuff. Nobody does it better than us.
Yeah, and it's not. You're not ever in a song like Nothing Rhymed. You're never accusing other people. You're almost accusing yourself. Drinking that Bonaparte shandy.
Yeah, Bonaparte shandy.
Yeah. Well, you know what that is?
No.
You know the story behind that?
No.
Well, in those days, if you mentioned a name product in a song lyric, they wouldn't play it. Lola, but the Kinks had Coca-Cola. Yeah. They said, and they had to, radios had to change it. So I was very conscious of that when Nothing Rhymed was finished. So because originally it was Napoleon brandy, so twist that around and you get Bonaparte shandy.
Very good.
Perfect. I just want to flip back a little bit because you were born in Ireland, and whether there was. So I'm taking it your parents are both Irish.
Yeah.
Was there? We all know how important and how much Irish music is within the family house. Was that something that you connected with?
Not really, because I didn't really like Irish families get together, of course, for the get together. The piano, the accordion comes out, and they sing all the Irish songs and stuff. I mean, not really, it didn't really interest me. But I'll tell you one little story. In those days, when my mother would have the gathering, because my father passed away when I was 12, so Mum was really the main person in our family. And the get-togethers every other weekend or Friday evening and stuff, the accordion, they would do the Irish songs. And Mum said to them one day, she said, Raymond writes songs. And they said, oh, really? She said, and would you like to hear what? So my mother was like, horrified. So I sang the song called Disappear, which I'd written, which became my first or second record with CDPS. And the silence at the end of it was so you know something, I vowed that I'd never again would I play my songs to anybody. I would never do that. I read about people like McCartney will sit in a room at a pub anywhere and he'll play whatever's going on at the time. I vowed after that experience, I would never play my songs to anybody other than the producer and the musicians I'm working with.
But it's people wanted to form bands in those days, mostly formed bands. You were a solo artist. How was that? Do you think?
Well, yeah,
because I'm very much, I'd say God, that sounds awful. I got my self-confidence from sitting on my own with my guitar and making songs. And when I made songs, they became like pieces of armor for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, how was your social life? And were you a quiet kid, or did you have did you try to form a band? Or
well, you did have a band, yeah.
I was in a band. Yeah, I was
in a band.
The catalyst for me, was for everybody of our generation at that time, was to be after the Beatles, with Love Me Do and Please Please Me. We just, all of us wanted to be in a band. So I started off on drums. Well, actually, no, it's true. I started off on guitar, and I'm left-handed, so I had a right-handed electric guitar, a Lucky 7, which my mother bought me. I didn't have an amp. That was the problem. So I couldn't really use it. So anyway, I gave up on the guitar and went on to the drums. And then I had a school band called the Doodles. We used to do a lot of Searchers material. I love the Searchers. Everybody was doing Beatles songs, but I love the Searchers. And then I went into a youth club band called, what was it called? Which were quite good. And then the big band was a band called Rick's Blues. And that was Rick Davis, who eventually went on with Supertramp and stuff. And Rick was the band. We were together. I was the drummer. We were a really good band. And the bass player and the guitarist were on apprenticeships, so they didn't want to risk going professional. But Rick and I would certainly have done it. And we came to London. We went to a demo studio in London. We did 2 of my songs. So I was beginning to write, if you like, the sort of commercial songs. Rick would write more bluesy stuff.
Rick sing.
Rick Davis.
Did he sing?
Yes, he did. But I was the kind of main vocalist, particularly as it was my songs we were singing. So,
but it's funny that sorry, the only what is interesting is how both of you, how Supertramp were the other people with that very percussive sort of piano sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, you could always hear Rick's piano playing. He is a brilliant musician. He was a much better drummer than me. He taught me blues piano because I couldn't play blues piano. He taught that to me. He introduced me to people like Chuck Berry. I mean, I would take up the Beatles album and say, listen to their version of "You Really Got a Hold of Me" or something, and Rick would say, listen to the original. So he was that kind of person, way ahead of everybody else. Fantastic music.
Guy's right, because there is a sense of your piano and Rick's piano in Supertramp being sort of separated.
Yeah. But there's a fascinating thing, if I can just still this for a second, which is your karate chop thing.
Yeah.
What's interesting is because and you talk about it being like a drums, the way you play.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that anyone like myself, and I bet Gary's the same, is that all of us untrained pianists always play octaves with our left hand.
Yes.
And you don't. You literally just knife one note.
Yeah. I mean, I'm playing.
It's amazing. It's incredible to watch.
I am playing the drums when that left hand is so important to me. But I don't pianoforte. I don't go up and down the keyboard. I couldn't. So I'm the Bruce Welch of the piano because I just rhythmically is what I do. And
that's a great description. I've never had anyone call themselves anything like that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, but I mean, he's underplaying himself though, Guy, because his chords,
I know.
like his chops on his chords are
no, the amount of chords. I mean, so I just looked up. I actually looked up Alone Again naturally before we came on, just to sort of have a play of it and look see what the chords are, and it's basically all of them.
Well, What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
It's all of the chords. There's just so many. You do, and this is where I see a similarity with you and Jimmy Webb, and there's so many lovely subtle key changes throughout your.
But that's Gary will tell you. It's like if you're writing a song, it's nice to go off.
Yeah.
And then find your way back. Sometimes you can't find your way back and stuff. And that's what's fun. I mean, the Alone Again had 2 middle eights, which I wasn't sure which one I was going to use. And I like that. That's the fun of it, because you start off when you're writing a lyric, nothing's there. You don't have a title, you don't have a story. And then suddenly it develops. And then you end up writing, I don't know if Gary does this, but you end up writing more verses than you need. You're putting as much effort into that as you were doing the earlier ones. So, I mean, that's one aspect of songwriting which still fascinates me.
But so let's just think, you were in this band with
Rick and
yeah. How did the solo career begin? And
well, because Rick and I had to decide what to do. We couldn't go professional, and so Rick needed to be in a band. So he went off with a band called the Lonely Ones, and I decided that I would go to London on my own and try and break into the business as a solo singer.
That's ironic. Sorry, he stayed in a band. You went off to be on your own, and he stayed in a band called the Lonely Ones.
They became the Lonely Ones, then they became the Joint. And then they became Supertramp and stuff, and the rest is history from their point of view. He couldn't have been a singer on his own and stuff. And I think he learned that chop from me, I've that left-handed chop. Only I could have done that.
So you did have a couple of tries, didn't you? I mean, you did. I mean, I think it Disappeared.
What Disappeared was recorded in the garden shed on one of those message tapes. That's
on YouTube.
That's what went around to record companies, because I couldn't afford. You'd borrow a tape recorder. The message tapes were always available if you had relatives in Australia or around the world. So I borrowed the tape recorder, did 4 little songs on that demo, on that tape, and one of them was Disappear. So my first record with CBS with a big-time producer who produced The Love Affair, Everlasting Love, and The Tremolos and stuff. And so my first record with them in a big studio, I wasn't that happy. So I asked CBS if I could put out Disappear, my demo, and you add a string quartet onto it and stuff. So the actual record that was released, and John Peel played this a lot, which is really good, was Disappear, garden shed tape.
Wow.
Brilliant.
What artists were you sort of
everything
that you came close to at that time?
I listened to everything, Gary. I bought everything, because that's what it's all about.
But also because this idea of, again, because this really sets up where you're going, in that it's a fantastically sort of dour, self-effacing. You start off just beating yourself up, don't you, with this song? That's what the character is doing, which is, I think, is very much the basis of all those later artists,
right?
Which at the time was a very unusual thing.
Yeah,
I can't really think who you'd be referencing for that. Wasn't it? There's the thing about going to get out for a drink and telling the girl who loves you that you're not. You tell her to disappear. It's all.
No, Disappear. It was. I was asking for a drink last night, and I was noticing that things just weren't quite right. For the bartender said, "You look queer, so disappear." If I sang that now, the bartender said, "You look weird, so disappear."
But I think that's what Guy's talking about, is that self-effacing lyric.
Yeah,
that you kind of made your own. It was a brave stance. Is it true? Do you think it was true, or was it a character?
I didn't know. It's you're getting into somebody else. That's what I love about lyric writing, is that you don't have to experience the thing to be able to write about it. It's an understanding of a subject you're going into. I love that aspect of songwriting. Well, I must tell you that the second single we released after Nothing Rhyme was Underneath the Blanket Go, which was for me a very innocent song. And I got Rick to come in, because Supertramp hadn't happened. I got him to come in and play piano on it. I wanted a Ramsey Lewis type of approach on the keyboard. So I remember years later, I did it, not years, a couple of years later, did an interview with Ray Coleman in London. And he said, how did you write that song about masturbation and stuff? And I can see where they were coming from, but I had no idea that was about that. It was just after Nothing Rhymed, Gordon Mills said to me, what have you got? And he said, well, I've got this thing called, just a rocky thing called Underneath, and let's go in and do it. That became the second single. There was no board meeting to decide that you must do another Nothing Rhymed type song.
Right.
You may have experienced something like that, Gary.
But that title in itself, I mean, the whole kind of, it has a kind of music hall flavour, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, some of your sort of lyrical approach and song approach did definitely took from that sort of Edwardian.
No question. Absolutely. I mean, musical, big influence. Strong melodies, crazy lyrics. I mean, I buy those CDs of those 20s, early 20s and stuff. I mean, I got right, Irving Berlin early stuff is you don't really like the lyrics, I don't think much on those, but the melodies will always stick out.
Yeah. The Good Old Days was one of the biggest things on TV at this time, wasn't it?
Well, and later on when we do Wackaday, that's musical. That's just pure musical. That's all it was. That's all it is. And the influence is there. I'm proud of that influence and stuff. Because all the time you're searching for influences. And the influences I'm always searching for is melody.
It's funny. One of my business partner, a guy who's looked after me for years, Steve Dagger, holds Gordon Mills up as a bit of a visionary, although not going his
Practices
books.
Yeah.
But because at a time when there was, full out rock and album orientated rock and Cream and all of these, and Beatles, he decides to manage bands for artists for a slightly older generation with Tom Jones, who else? I forgot who else he managed, but
Engelbert.
And then
the other side of the door from
you went with him, obviously.
Well, the story there is that after 67 with CBS, and then some people take me on to represent me, I wasn't happy. Then Major Minor came on the scene with Phil Solomons, who promised me, because they were doing all the videos that were suddenly films that were being shown. And he made a promise to me that do lots of things. That didn't happen. So I tried to get out of Major Minor. And I thought at that point, 69, I really need good representation. So I sent the tape to Gordon Mills, knowing that I wasn't going to be an Engelbert or a Tom Jones. And I felt that was a good thing. But apparently his secretary said when he opened up the envelope with the message tape and saw the picture of me in my jacket, he threw it in the waste paper basket. But later that afternoon, Vicky, his secretary, said he got curious again. He took it out. And as an ex-songwriter, because he wrote hits for people like Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, I'll Never Get Over You in the 60s and stuff. So Gordon was a songwriter. He co-wrote It's Not Unusual. So he had...
Wow.
He had he knew. He knew a good song. So he heard something in the songs. And I went got a meeting at his home. I came out to Weybridge, to his home. I'd never seen a house like it. And when he wanted to hear more than he'd heard on the tape to be convinced that I was good enough. And the nice thing for me was that not only did he like the extra songs I played him, but he didn't mind the image. He didn't like the image, but he felt, look, that's what you want to wear. Go ahead and do it. And I was in seventh heaven. When they dropped me off at the station to go back to London, I missed the last train. So I spent the whole night sitting on the station bench. I was in seventh heaven. It was the most wonderful feeling. I knew things were going to happen. And I hadn't even written Nothing Rhymed at this point. But I was so excited about having somebody that big who would get all the publicity that would be necessary to promote you as an artist. And so spending the whole night sitting on a railway station desk, was not a problem. I was really happy. But Gordon was, Gary, he was a really good manager guy. He helped me so much in those early days, getting all the promotion I needed to be successful. No question about that. When Gordon and I fell out, it was mid-70s, and things are not, things are slowing down. And Gordon would say to me, look, right, and of course he produced my records. He produced Nothing Rhymed. He produced Weep Elvin. He produced Alone Again. So he had really good side to his production, his musical ability. But the mid-70s, and Gordon was spending more time maybe in America, and he had gorillas. He had a private zoo, and he was getting into that and stuff. And I felt that I saw what Rod Stewart was doing with the producer who took him on when he did Atlantic Crossing. I said to Gordon, you're my manager, you're my record producer. Why don't you let me work with other producers? You'd still manage me, and it could be good for us and stuff. Unfortunately, Gordon wouldn't accept that. he said, if I don't manage you, then that's the end of it. So I had to make that.
I think we should see other people.
Yeah, it's it's a really sad time, guy. I didn't want to have to do that. I mean, I really hated the idea, but I thought that, I really felt that for me to move on, it was necessary to make that move.
Oh, were you happy with him as a producer? And obviously you had Johnny Spence in doing all the arrangements.
Well, to the extent that when Nothing Rhymed, because Nothing Rhymed with Herbie, God rest his soul.
Herbie Flowers.
Herbie Flowers. Herbie
Of
did
course.
the bass.
Which is something we meant to talk about in intro. Sorry, but carry on.
Yeah. So Herbie was the session for Nothing Rhymed was magic. Just Herbie on bass. He got that opening note. Me on piano, a live vocal. And so when it came to mixing, Gordon couldn't push the voice up and take the piano down because, as you know, you're singing live. So he said, "Can we go back in the studio and get you to sing the song again, not sitting at the piano?" I said, "No." I said, "What we've got is great. Just leave it." He said, "No, let's try this." So reluctantly, I went back with them to the studio and I stood on the microphone. And I did my best Tom Jones and tried desperately to sing the song. I heard them, the intercom come on and say, "Ray, sounded great, come and listen." So I go up and I listened to it. We used, of course, the original.
He used to double track your voice though, didn't he?
Yeah. Not with Nothing Rhymed. I mean, that came about 71. It came No Matter How I Try, I think, the second hit single. After Underneath the Blanket Go, that was double tracking, and it sounded really good, Gary. It really had a commercial effect. George Martin did it with the Beatles. You hear McCartney singing All My Loving, it's double tracked. John Lennon didn't like double tracking, but it sounded really good. It was commercial sounding. And so a lot of my songs, Alone Again, all double tracked. I was good at double tracking because I was so set in the way I did something. I didn't sort of overreach. I didn't change vocals on different versions or different takes. I pretty much sang the same every time. So matching my D-track voice, I didn't need to hear the first vocal to be able to match it with the second.
Oh wow, that is impressive. Because I guess going back to Gordon, the great thing that he did do was that whatever song you wanted to do, he would go along with that, which is an incredible.
Yeah, because absolutely. It's just, what have you got? What have you got? Yeah. And so I would say, well, I've got this and stuff, and we would just do it. And I think, he was good like that. And
but also you were right. Because your choices were right. Because let's face it, an artist can be their own worst enemy when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah. No, the ending was really sad. I mean, I don't really like the court case. Was awful, and I had great respect for Gordon as what he had done for me in my early career. We break up, and Gary may know this. There was a point when young songwriters were offered their own publishing company within a publishing company. So you'd get a percentage of the publishing side as opposed to the performance side. The performance goes to you, but the publishing side goes to the publisher. So they were giving out to young writers. Deke Arlen was head of April Music, who I was signed to, with 2 more years left of my contract with them, and Gordon signing me. Deke said, we'll offer you this contract where you can have your own GOS company within the April Music company. And so Gordon signs me, and he does deals with April, getting the B-side of future records, and they work something out together. And Gordon said to me at that point, I said, will you give me that? And Gordon said, yeah, if you're successful, I'll give you that little company within the company, big company. And as the years went by, I would occasionally say, any news on giving me that little company that you thought I could have? Yeah, don't worry, you'll get it and stuff. And so as the years go by, it didn't happen. And then when we broke up, we shook hands, and I left his office. I thought, because I said to him as I left him, will I still get that interest in my songs you promised me? He said, yeah, you go into the MAM and they'll Bill Smith, his man in charge there, they'll do it for me. And of course, when I went in after the weekend, went into the man's office, they basically told me to put it, I won't use a 4-letter word, but basically just to go away and stuff. And that was a sad time. And that led to what I thought would be a small item in a court case with a conflict of interest or whatever. It became a major, major battle, which I won in the end, but I do regret that those things had to take place. And I do regret the harm it did to the family and the disruption it caused and I don't know.
So you did it for a lot of people other than yourself, because the business needed to be changed.
Yeah, the conflict of interest is a major issue. If you're managing a singer and you also own the record company he's signed to, how are you going to be able to get him the right kind of deal? I mean, you can't. It doesn't work. So
but you're a bit of a hero for writers, not just for this, are you? I mean, you've got more form in this area, like getting rights with the with
sampling.
the sampling rights,
Yeah, that was the first ever sampling case to go to court, and who needed that? I had to go to America to go to court, be the first one in court, the first one on the stand. Bismarcky, who was at that time the sort of the big rapper, who had legally released the sample from Malone again when I had told them they couldn't do it because they didn't like it.
I didn't like.
And he wasn't even in court. It was court still.
Sorry, that's a good question, Gary, and I really like what you said about this. Your reasoning, Ray, for why you didn't want him to use the sample.
Well, because it was a comic. I mean, I didn't know he was a comic rapper. So when they asked permission, I said, well, let me hear it. So they sent it to me, and I said, no, I don't like to be associated with comedy on this song. This is one song in my catalogue that needs to be protected always. It's stipulated in contracts, and here we are, a good example of somebody doing it without permission. So we said no, but he still released it and stuff. And that led to then the court case, and that led to me having to go to court in New York. I mean, who needs that? You need a hole in it. But as you say, it did set a precedent, and it made it good for people in the future.
Sometimes it's great. I mean, we had Labby Sifri on the show, and he had Kanye West sampling a great part of one of his songs into his. It was
Eminem. No, Eminem. Eminem's big hit was the Labby Sifri.
But so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But you need to certainly have control, especially on a song like Alone Again, because what you're right to say that, because it's such a big record in America, isn't it?
Yeah, no question. It's their song. It becomes their song. That's why you get the likes of Dan Kroll, Bublé, and Andy Williams. So many covers and stuff. And Neil Diamond did a really nice version.
So let's just talk about that.
It becomes their song, and I'm really happy for that. Because while it was a big success here, Gary, in America, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
How did you make that move? What happened? Do you remember the moment it went, oh shit, this is going to be a hit in America?
Well, no, I know, because I never really looked beyond Europe. I mean, I wasn't sort of wanting to rule the world. I didn't really want to go to America. When we were nominated for 3 Grammys, I didn't really want to go because I'm not really a red carpet person. I didn't like the idea of doing that. It was... I mean, Nothing Rhymed had come out in America, didn't really do anything. It's like those early Beatles successes in America didn't happen. It took I Want to Hold Your Hand for them, whereas the earlier songs had not happened. So it was that classic cliche thing of where a radio station in some part of America picked up on it after weeks of it being released, and he then played it so much that other stations picked it up, and then it becomes a roller coaster. And then it ends up everybody's playing it, and the record then becomes a #1 record for so many weeks and stuff. Well, you know the kind of feeling that is with success like that in America.
But you did the Burt Bacharach show.
Yeah, I did. I went over to promote it in '72. Of course, once the success took off, did Sonny and Cher show, and the Bacharach thing I did, Gary, was a special he did, a TV special. By these famous directors, and we did that in London, and I went along to sit and talk to him and stuff. I mean, I'm a great admirer, as you must be, of Bacharach. Fantastic melody.
Yeah, and it's great because it was really quite an in-depth interview he did with you, wasn't it? I mean,
I guess it's
a really lovely thing to hear, which for then was, that's a great, unusual thing to hear.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit odd in the sense that here's a great songwriter talking about my song and stuff, and it didn't seem
too up already.
But it went it went really well. I really admiration for Burt. I think what Elvis Costello did, I have great admiration for Elvis when you work with him, because I don't think he's an easy person to work with from a lyrical point of view, but certainly as a melody writer, he was one of the best.
Going back to your manager, and how difficult this was to break up with him. It made even more difficult that one of your biggest hits was about his kid. And just talk us through a bit of that, Ray.
About what? Sorry, Gary, on.
One of your biggest hits was about his child.
Yeah, Claire, of course. So the Claire, the melody was there. When it comes to making an album, what will happen is Gordon will say, let's hear a few ideas you've got and stuff. And I would play samples of melodies, no lyrics, because I would never finish a lyric or start a lyric till I knew it was going to be recorded. So I really liked that melody. And then I thought to myself, you know, I used to babysit for them and Claire would be the one getting up. I have a great affection with children. I come from a large family. And Claire was the one playing around and stuff. And I'd go up to the house. His wife, Jo, would cook meals for me. And I felt like a member that, with my father having died at 12, I always looked upon Gordon as a kind of father figure because I felt that he was always going to be good with me and stuff. I was like a member of the family. I went to Vegas where we recorded in a mobile studio, a couple of the tracks from the first album. And I stayed in the house with his wife in a bunk bed, in a camp bed in the bathroom with Gordon Jones, his assistant. And then I remember in 72 when we went to Gstaad, and I had a lot of success because there was all these cameramen outside the chateau, his chateau that we were staying in. Again, I went with the family and the kids, and I spent downstairs on a bunk bed, on a camp bed.
You really also you lived in the gatehouse of his manor.
Yeah, I was.
There's a pattern here, Gilbert, and it's not necessarily. And the fact that you're babysitting for Claire, one could say this is pointing to a level of Dickensian exploitation, almost. But I thought, I think, he meant he's literally talking about getting a little cupboard under the stairs.
But I found that. That just shows you. I thought it was quite funny to be in this lovely house in Gstaad, and I'm sleeping on downstairs on a sort of bed
with the gorilla.
I like that.
Yeah, but in the house that you're paying for.
No, but no, it's as a member of the family. That's the way it was, and I liked the connection I had with Jo, his wife, who was really good to me, cooking it and stuff. And so I wrote the song as a thank you to Gordon and a thank you to his wife. For Gordon for the success and Jo, his wife, for liking me and my songs and cooking for me. And Claire does it's her laugh at the end. And Gordon plays the harmonica. He was a Welsh harmonica champion, so he plays the solo in Claire. So it's very much that family record, and I'm really proud of it. There are issues about that which crop up now. I don't think we'll discuss that. We could do, but I don't really want to go in that area. I could tell you a story that really kind of brought me down a little, but I don't think I want to do that.
It's up to you.
Yeah. But I'm really proud of the song, and it's a showstopper when we're on the road.
There's an innocent.
Sorry, Gary. But I was saying, because there's a happy sort of result. Didn't you get reconciled with Claire?
Absolutely, we still see her.
There's a happy ending.
I mean, of course, for the first couple of years after the court case was over, and I'd won it profusely. His family obviously took his side in terms of how things were going on and the way it developed. But over the years, I got to meet back with his wife, and Claire. To this day, we still meet up, and it's a very, very special, very special.
You haven't stopped, Ray, have you? This is what's great looking.
Have you stopped writing now, Gary?
No, but I have been through phases. I have been through phases. For a few years I was concentrating more on acting, and then I'm just finished my third solo album, which is coming out soon. But I know you personally. You just can't virtually live a day, can you? This is your oxygen. This is what you do. You make records. You make music. I mean, is it something you literally get up every day and do?
I think if I'm needed to find the melodies to make the next record, to make the next album, then I need to work at it to get those melodies. So it's the discipline. It's the American system of Don Kirshner, Carole King, and Neil Diamond going into a room with a piano,
brill building 9 to 5,
the 9 to 5. And sitting there to come up with a song and stuff. So I have that attitude. I'll sit there from 9 to 5 to see what I can come up with. And if I don't get a tune within a few days, it's not a waste of time because you practice. It's always practicing. Your fingers are getting more subtle. So that's a good aspect of it. But I love that discipline. I think it's important, particularly as you get older. As we get older.
Do you allow your mood to go into the piano, onto the piano, and to write the song with? Is that something that, or do you find you're discovering it at the piano, or trying to change your mood even?
I'm not sure it's a mood. The mood is always the same. Gary, the process is exactly the same today as it was in the garden shed when I was trying to write, because I would just sit at the piano to see what I could come up with. In those days, I'd borrow a tape recorder to keep it a reel-to-reel thing. So today, what happens is I use cassettes. I don't know if you probably use the digital.
I was going to ask you that.
I love cassettes.
I was going to ask if you still use them, because I love
absolutely. Because the ghetto blasters from the early 70s were big with the inbuilt microphones. So you could place that on top of the piano, put in the cassette, come up with an idea, press the button, record it, move on, try and get something else. And all the digital devices, which are much better sounding than my demos and stuff, cassettes, the digital things are great devices and stuff, and they capture the sound brilliantly, but I don't like them because you have to put glasses on to look at it every time you want to stop and start. So I'm happy with my ghetto blaster. I'm happy with it on top of the piano with the 2 inbuilt mics, and I make the really bad sounding demos. But if it's a good song, it'll survive and it'll end up coming out somehow.
I saw in the documentary that I watched. My guy and I both watched it. You look like you're an amazing archivist of your own stuff. I mean, you've got a room that is absolutely full of every single note you've ever made. It looks like. I wished I had kept stuff. I don't keep anything. I mean, is this something you've done forever? Your early lyrics,
or are you solving cold cases? I don't know.
I keep everything. I mean, I'm a terrible hoarder. Terrible hoarder. That goes right down to clothes I wear. I mean, you know, if I have a pair of jeans, they'll have to fall off me before I buy a second pair. And if I do buy a second pair, they won't be worn until first day. So the hoarder thing, that came in very useful, Gary, because during the court case, when you have a court case, you have to supply lots of documentation. And if you were claiming certain things against the person you're in court with, do you have any documentation to back that up? And I had a diary which I kept in 68, 69, and when I met Gordon about the early start. And that diary was very useful, particularly when it came to notes about getting my own publishing company. The hoarding thing is not good, but it helped me, because to this day I can't stop the hoarding. I mean, but keeping everything, it has benefited me, no question.
I actually think that, you know, maybe that should be all put together in a fabulous book at some point.
Definitely.
At the very least, I'm surprised there isn't a Gilbert O'Sullivan musical, aren't you, Guy?
Well, right.
I mean, you just said that your lyrics scream out for music.
Yes. Well, here's the story there. The story there is that one of the biggest influences for me has always been the Great American Songbook and musicals, going right back to early Berlin and Hammerstein and Jerome. I love Jerome Kern's, people like that. So the influence has always been there. But what happened was that in 1990, after all the court cases, when it was all over and I successfully got the result I wanted, it meant I'd lost myself in the 80s. So here we are, it's 1990. And I got a record deal to bring out the album I'd been recording during the period when I couldn't release a record. And so what do? Go back on tour? I decided that while it would be great to have an audience and to be on the stage with the band, I would do something different. So I came up with this idea of the rise and fall and rise of a singer. And we had 6 actors. And over the 2 hours, we would perform the rise and fall and rise of a singer, which would be me. And we would illustrate it with sketches of what it was like for that early start, what it was like when you were successful, and what it's like when you broke up. So all those were played out. And all the songs in it were my songs, so that anybody who came to see it wouldn't have been cheated about not hearing the songs that they wanted to. And then in 1972, and that was a big success for me. The funny thing was, the other night we did a show in Dublin, a really good show. And I explained to the audience that we did this play. And we came to Dublin for 5 nights, and we had a really good night. And said, "Were any of you there?" And there's 1,500 people. Not one hand went up that they saw it. So I thought that was really funny. But here's the thing: 72, I'm making the next album. It's called Every Song Has Its Play, and I made it as a kind of soundtrack to the story. I got Laurie Holloway to do the you know on the soundtrack to a musical you get the overture, or you get an element of all the tunes. So we did all that, made it seem like a musical, and the songs I wrote for it were new songs. And so there is the musical the influence there strongly, and that's about as close as I've come to doing a musical. What about you?
You could string together a narrative using your songs, isn't it? With the stuff that's already there. Definitely.
Yeah, well, maybe so.
Get better.
Oh, Guy and I have written 2 musicals.
Yeah, together.
But
Wow, for example.
Well, we had something that was on at the National Theatre for
Fantastic.
It was for it was for the National Theatre what's it program? It was a schools program, Connections, and it's and it was all these top playwrights. I mean, we felt we were kind of ready.
Wow.
Patrick Marber and all sorts of people, and we wrote this musical with a guy called Snu Wilson, based on an old Mayakovsky play, and it's performed by schools to this day.
Oh, brilliant! And was Gary's songs in that?
No, well, Guy and I wrote the songs.
No, we wrote these songs. We wrote the songs.
Grand. You could revive that, right? You can revive that at any time.
It's possible. Yeah? Possible. That's hard work. we should talk about your new album, though, shouldn't we, Guy?
Yes,
I mean,
yes, we should. Which
Songbook,
re-recording the Songbook.
Yes, just stripped down.
Really lovely, intimate. Yeah, really nice, intimate versions of.
Well, I wasn't really mad about doing this kind of thing. But what happened was that we came out of after the Barbican show. Myself and guitar player Bill Shanley really worked together very well, and the record company thought it sounded. They really liked it, and they asked us if we could do a record like that. And the more I thought about it, the more I agreed that it could be okay. And I was certainly happy. There was no audience. It was just the two of us over 2 days, little studio in London, and I was really happy. And I think it's nice, stripped down, simple. It doesn't have a get down or a matrimony, which is unusual for me.
Do you think, as a man in your 70s, that you sing the lyrics? The lyrics have a different meaning to you in any of these songs now. That you sing them differently, you feel differently about them.
The only song I never sing when I'm rehearsing. I never sing Alone Again because it's just I don't want to. That's the one song I don't want to just be singing when I'm bluffing my way through lots of the other songs. I just enjoy doing it. The rock and roll stuff, I love it and stuff.
I just want to is there more?
I know what you mean.
Approach being, is there more of a from an older man's perspective?
There's another way to couch this, which I'll say is that when you perform songs, any of your songs, it's the audience we hear that song we know performed by the person who recorded it then.
Yeah.
When you re-record a song, then it's suddenly this person now doing it. So is that what you mean, Gary? So is that then more, so what is, does it take on a different resonance for you, what the song's saying? Because it's you now.
I mean, I don't really, I hear what you're saying, Guy, but the analysis aspect of what I do never plays. I never get into that. I just get on with it. I'm really happy. Nothing can interfere. I don't have any thought process about why I do what. Suffice to say, the end result always makes me happy.
I tell you what it is. I think it's different for the listener as well, because, when you were singing songs like We Will, to me, as an 11-year-old, it was about the house I lived in at that very time. Now, I'm listening to you sing it now, and it's about both of us sharing a really nostalgic experience together.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, okay. That's nice to hear that. I mean, and you pick on a song that I'm really proud of. It wasn't the biggest hit, but the colloquial aspect of it, because I feel as a lyric writer, I don't know about you, I think it's important we write the way we speak. Think that we don't want to be singing about downtown LA or New York City. And we're English. I'm Irish by birth, but I'm very much an English songwriter in that tradition. And when you have things like Bagsy Bean and Gold, when Andy Williams, Andy Williams wanted to record it, and he didn't know what Bagsy Bean and Gold. I love that, and it's my mother. You talk, Gary, of it being a family thing. I mean, it's very much a family song. My mother's there, 6 kids that she's bringing up. She's got the book that she's able to make a bit of money from, going around the houses, one of those Freeman's catalogue things.
Oh yeah, my mum did that.
Yeah, and then but she has 6 children to bring up and stuff. I mean, I didn't really have a happy time as a young teenager because, I remember going to the hairdressers twice in the same day. I came back after the first haircut and she sent me straight back to get another one and stuff. It wasn't the best of times for me as a young teenager. But
your father died early as well.
My mother, yeah. So it's very much a family record. I liked it when you said that you felt that. And I'm really proud of the song. It's not been the biggest hit, but it's a lovely song to sing. But it's that thing about...
there is so much in the songs about you. I mean, that unbelievably heartbreaking line about, my mother was 60.
Oh yeah.
You know, only, yeah.
Died, you know, and how she. I mean, really, I mean, just now I've gone through that experience of my father dying as well. You know, that did bring me to tears re-listening to that. But
and people are surprised with that. They most of people I meet who talk about that song, Gary Guy, they assume it's based on personal experience and stuff. But as I said, I think what makes us a good lyricist, makes you and I good lyricists, are the fact that we have an understanding of a subject that we can get into without having to experience it. I think that's an important thing. If you needed if it was always about an experience, it might be more difficult to write. Very few,
especially when you talk about topping yourself in Alone Again Naturally, which I was wondering. I don't know if you could write that now. I don't know if you'd be allowed to put that in a song for public consumption. You know?
I mean, they're difficult subjects.
Yeah,
at the time, and famine, and oh my.
Yeah. So I think Claire might be an issue there, but I think Alone Again, it's people pick up on it. I get lots of emails from people when they hear this song for the first time. You know, it was heard in this reindeer thing. You know, this reindeer thing.
Oh, Baby Reindeer, right?
Yeah. I mean, the amount of people that picked up on Alone Again because it was used in that. Interesting enough, the guy who did the reindeer thing had written to me, and I didn't like the reindeer description I was given, and I said no to protect the song. And they then tried again, and I said no. In the end, he wrote me a personal letter, and he said how much one of my albums was his favorite from the 70s. He loved my songs, and would I just agree to do it? So I did, albeit slightly reluctantly. But the response that people, that's the thing about syncs, you know yourself, Gary, that when your songs are used, whether it's for a commercial of some kind, the reaction people will have wanting to find out who that was and who's singing and stuff. It's interesting, really interesting aspect of
Is it fair to say that we all go through periods of suddenly being out of fashion, all of us as musicians, but I think it's fair to say your credibility is really high at the moment. It's, everything has seemed to have been working out great for you in Mojo giving you 4 stars on that album. You did an album with Ethan Johns, Glyn Johns' son.
Yeah, Ethan, yeah.
That sounds great. Just seems there's your later years, you've really found your place.
Yeah, I'm happy with. I mean, for many years, I mean, the music papers completely ignored me. They still pretty much ignore me, but not as much. I feel the album with Ethan was a really step in the right direction. Great reaction to that, and then the current album, Driven, really good reaction to that. All very positive for a way forward. I mean, I always feel I'm on the way up. Historically, I remember the major music magazines have never been interested in talking to me about songwriting and stuff, which is an interesting subject, and I have some experience of it. But now things are opening up a little in terms of there is that exposure, there is that respect, if you like, and so I appreciate that. But I'm determined to take it even further, because you all the time you're searching, you want more. I mean, there will be another album next year. I've already started writing the songs for that. It's an exciting time for me. And,
but it seems, it is. But I'm sorry to interrupt. First of all, to add to that, I think to add to what Gary was saying is I've never been aware of the level of acknowledgement from other artists that you're getting at the moment. It is like your sort of place has finally been recognised in the firmament.
Yeah, I'm happy. There was that period when I didn't like what wasn't happening and stuff, but I'm over that. I got over that because I've made some really good albums. The one before Ethan's one, Gilbert O'Sullivan, Latin Ala Lee, Peggy Lee. I loved Peggy Lee, and she made 2 albums in 1960-61 called Latin Ala G, Ole Ala Lee. So we did an album before Ethan's album, Latin Ala G. We reproduced the cover on Peggy's cover. She had 2 matadors, 2 male matadors standing on either side of her. On my album, we had 2 female matadors and me on the inside. So we reproduced the cover exactly the way those 2 albums were, and it's a really good album because I love Latin. So I was really, things like that. So that was up for me. And then Ethan, so it's all good. It's all a good step in the right direction for maintaining some level of respect and success.
But thank you, Ray. Anything?
Sorry, can I just add one thing? Sorry, before is that what I've been listening to your music all day, which is a really lovely thing to do. And my Mrs. Georgie has been coming in and out and singing along to every song. She knows the words to all of your songs.
Let me tell you that. I was sitting at my kitchen table. My wife's younger than me. She wasn't buying your records or around when your records first came out in the early 70s. And I'm playing some of those early 70s songs. Who's this guy? His voice is amazing.
Oh, really? Is that from the Songbook? Is it from the Songbook?
No, it was
from the original.
The original.
Record. Yeah, okay, cool. Cool.
So we're still spreading the word.
Yeah. And you're off on tour, right?
Yeah, we returned. We just come back from 2 nights in Holland, and we do a few dates in the UK in a couple of weeks' time. Then we go back to Ireland for 5 nights in the city of my birth, Waterford. I was given the freedom of the city just a few months back.
Congratulations.
We're going back there for 5
That's
nights.
fantastic. Did they not let you wander around before?
I know.
No, it's really a good time. It's great talking to you guys, and I look forward, Gary, to your next solo album.
Oh, thank you.
And Guy, what about your record? Guy?
Guy's off on tour.
No, I'm off on tour with David Gilmour.
Oh, okay,
So,
that's good.
Yeah, playing for him. But yeah, so that's me.
What was your view? What was your view when Herbie died? And
Oh my, Herbie. Well,
Herbie.
so I mean, an absolute titan, lovely man. Because I used to work with Chris Spedding a lot, the guitarist, and
a
then,
great guitar. Yeah, right. I used Chris on my solo album. He's brilliant guitar.
That's right. He's fantastic.
Brilliant.
But of course, him and Herbie were really. And in fact, because when I first moved to Brighton years ago, it was this really sweet thing. I thought was Chris Spedding and Herbie Flowers did a jazz breakfast together on Sundays at the Dome Cafe.
Fantastic.
And of course, from obviously Lou Reed's and
the Walk on the Wild Side. Walk on the Wild Side.
Yeah,
and even that little based on Nothing Rhymed. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's so simple but so effective. So effective. Wonderful.
But that's the lovely thing about Herbie. He's got that thing where it's just some fantastic, brilliant little idea that he puts into everything. That's what was so unique about him.
Yeah,
So, even the Grandad story. You know the Grandad story. when he wrote Grandad.
Yeah, I know.
He was selling home, and he just needed a hook, and he just couldn't think of anything. And someone came to the door, went ding ding. The doorbell, isn't it? Grandad. Yeah, that's where it came from.
amazing. We'll let you go. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah. I love talking to you guys. Great.
It was a real honour, Ray. It must be said. And thank you so much for everything you've given us.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Take care.